When it comes to making new Justice League stories, it seems like DC Comics' knee-jerk response is always to instantly just throw them against Darkseid, but today we're here to tell you that Darkseid is not the Justice League's only good villain. Guys, I'm Thomas.
I'm Merlin.
Together we're the Comic Lads.
And let's break down some of DC's most underrated and iconic villains.
Yes.
Before we get into it, guys, question of the week, we want to hear from you. Who do you believe is the Justice League's best villain? Are you a Darkseid fan?
I'm a huge, listen, title might confuse people. I'm a huge Darkseid fan.
We love Darkseid.
He is dope as hell. He's for sure top 5 DC villains for me. But he's in, literally everything.
Yeah. Let us know if you like one of the more underrated picks that we're gonna mention, or shoot your comment down below of a character that we may have missed.
But before we get into it, guys, make sure to like, subscribe if you haven't already, become one of the lads.
Join our ladhood. That doesn't work.
Let's get into it.
As always, we have a few on our list, but we do have an honorable mention before we get to the main list.
Yes, and that is Mongul.
Mongul.
Getting into Mongul, he's your kind of typical Thanos-looking, Darkseid-looking alien despot. What I love about Mongul is that he's not as rigid and kind of emotionless in the way that Darkseid and Thanos are. He's much more of a showman. You know, he's like a classical Roman dictator that holds Colosseum fights and stuff on his world planet.
Yeah, he's almost more focused on the moment and making sure everyone can see him beating someone than actually beating the person himself. Yeah, actually a great example of that is in a Green Lantern run when he takes over the Sinestro Corps and he literally just holds Sinestro's planet hostage, waiting for him to come back just so he can beat him in front of everyone.
Yeah, doesn't he have rings on every finger too,
yeah,
from Yellow Lanterns that he slaughtered?
So badass.
So sick. He gets washed though, no? By Sinestro?
Obviously. I mean, it's Sinestro. He freaking founded the Lantern Corps.
Yeah, guys, he is just an honorable mention.
Yeah. Oh, another great story with him is the Justice League Unlimited episode.
Yeah, guys. For the man who has everything, incredible episode of Justice League adapted from a story with the same name by Alan Moore. A story about how Mongul comes to Earth, goes to the Fortress of Solitude, and puts this weird
alien plant
on Superman called the Black Mercy that basically, once it attaches itself to a host, makes them live their heart's greatest desires, live a whole life in their head where everything is different and they've had what they've always wanted. But if you try to forcibly remove it, that person loses that life.
Yeah.
You know, Superman sees his whole life on Krypton, he gets married, he has a kid, and then when Batman and Wonder Woman rip the plant off him, Krypton explodes in his vision.
Right.
And he loses his family.
Yeah.
Again.
And I love when he faces Mongul after being kind of snapped out of that false reality, and he's like, you don't know what you just took from me.
Yeah, and Mongul's like, oh, it must have felt like tearing off your own arm, and you're like, what the fuck?
And that's what's great, is that Mongul is such a physical presence, but in those kinds of stories, he can still mess with you mentally.
Yeah, he's not just a dumb, he's not like Doomsday, he's not just a big brute. He is sadistic and
he enjoys watching you suffer.
Yeah, and maniacal. He does. Yeah, he loves the pain and suffering of others, and that's why, a spoiler, at the end of the story, when they get the plant off and put it onto Mongul, I think it's Wonder Woman says, what do you think he's seeing? And Batman's like, whatever it is, it's too good for him. And as it pans closer to Mongul's face, he's smiling, and you just hear the screams and suffering of the damned, and you're like,
yeah, this guy's sick in the head.
It's a kid's show, bro.
Yeah, I know. But Mongul is just our honorable mention. Getting into the main list itself, or starting things off, kind of a little cheat code of a pick.
Yeah, but they're one villain, basically. We're talking about the Crime Syndicate.
Yeah, they're kind of the opposite evil versions of the Justice League.
Exactly, yeah, multiversal version. I know we're all tired of multiverse, but these were the first ones, and they're cool. They're from Earth 3, which in a lot of iterations is an Earth where everything is opposite, where evil always prevails, whereas in the main DC universe, good generally always prevails. On that Earth, Lex Luthor and Joker and shit are flipped, so they're the good guys.
Yeah, they're the vigilantes.
But the Crime Syndicate is such a cool concept that I really want to see in the movies one day too. I feel like it'd be such a cool way for the Justice League actors to stretch their muscles and play two characters, you know?
It's definitely scary too, because in the DC universe, everyone on Earth is very reassured by the fact that the Justice League is protecting them. But imagine being in a world where you have people that have the Justice League's powers, but they're malicious and they want to dominate everything.
It's horrible.
You're fucked.
That Earth sucks.
You're screwed. I feel like there's like people of that planet must have very little hope. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's horrible. The flipped version of Wonder Woman isn't actually Diana, it's Lois Lane of that Earth, which I always found kind of weird. And like, instead of a lasso of truth, she has like the lasso of submission. And I might be like remembering this wrong, but I remember there's an issue that kind of centers on Superwoman, the evil Wonder Woman, and like, she has kind of a weird like dommy mommy thing going with that universe's Jimmy Olsen. And I'm like, yo,
I hate that.
it's really whack. And like the opposite Hal Jordan, like on our Earth where Hal Jordan is a bastion of bravery and courage and willpower, he's like this like slinky like creep incel who just like always peeking in on like Carol.
I hate that.
So gross.
Yeah, he has like a Hector Hammond kind of complex there.
Exactly.
It's such a slam dunk too in comic storytelling to have like evil kind of twisted variants of characters, you know what I mean, of the heroes.
Absolutely. Well, it's like Reverse Flash, you know, or like Venom.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so cool.
It's just fun to see someone with the same power set going against your hero.
Yeah,
you know?
and having the complete opposite values.
Yeah. Okay, this next character on our list, I think we both really like from the Justice League animated shows from the past.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about Amazo.
Amazo is so sick. I gotta stop just saying like platitudes like that. In pretty much every iteration that you see Amazo in, he's an android that has the ability to mimic the powers of any hero that he studies. So like when he goes up against the Justice League, the more people you throw at him, the more powerful he gets, because he just adds another moveset / power set to his arsenal.
I love it too because when he does absorb someone's power or, you know, move set, it kind of makes a one-on-one encounter with one specific member of the league like totally unfair. You know what I mean? Like, it's always the combined efforts of everyone having to take him down together that makes him victorious.
Absolutely.
Batman would like never win a 1v1. Superman would, well, I mean, maybe Superman would win a 1v1.
Well, in Under the Red Hood, the comic and the movie, Batman and Nightwing do manage to take down a lesser powered Amazo.
Yeah.
But that Amazo has super strength, flight, and heat vision.
Yeah. But again, it's who's writing the story. You know what
sure.
I mean? There's moments like that, but then also in like Young Justice continuity, I remember there's this one episode where an Amazo bot fights the Justice League, and they're like, oh yeah, it took us like 18 hours to take him down. You know what I mean? Imagine just fighting and brawling out 18 hours just to take down your foe.
So cool. You know what sucks about that version? Is that he has to like say the hero that he's channeling. He's like, access Black Canary.
Access Black Canary.
I also really like the iterations where there's like a bit of humanity to Amazo, you know?
That's the Justice League cartoon version.
Exactly what we called upon earlier, where he kind of has a bit of like an identity crisis in his like gaining of consciousness.
Yeah, and he's like, what is my purpose?
Yeah, and he just leaves for like an entire season or whatever.
And then when he comes back, he's like Dr. Manhattan, basically.
Yeah, it's great.
So sick.
So I like him when he's more than just like an evil android, you know what I mean?
I do too. I really like his comic book version too, because like I feel like people downplay just how OP he is, because like we often see him like, you know, he'll have super speed, like we said, and super strength and heat vision, but he also has the ability to like make a Green Lantern ring and like a lasso of truth.
Yeah, he's been broken.
That's insane. How do you make a Green Lantern ring?
Yeah, that's why I like it too, though, is that all the heroes come together to face him, but he's such like a cold, like emotionless fucking force of nature that can just whoop all of their asses, you know what I mean? Also just like a hilariously awesome design.
I love it.
Yeah.
With the pointy ears and like the weird kind of like purple
receding hairline, like
he's got like the Dracula hairline. Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah.
I like how they kind of consolidated in Young Justice where he does have that design, like he's like shirtless with the green pants and that stupid like widow's peak, but they draw him like kind of angular, and he has like the robotic musculature and like the lines and stuff. which is really, really cool. He needs to be the opening in like a Justice League movie, like the opening.
Oh, I would eat up a scene with him versus the JL.
I would lose it.
It would be insane. I hope they don't make him like, if they ever do him, I hope they don't make him some kind of like weird mechanical ball or something. I feel like they would do some shit like that modern day age. You know
What do you mean? What? Like a Galactus cloud type situation where like it's not,
or like a parallax thing. You know what I mean? Where it's just a fart cloud.
Yeah, a giant shit cloud.
I feel like they'd make some kind of like floating R2-D2 looking android that they would be like, oh, we call this the Amazo project, and it wouldn't just be Amazo himself. You know?
Don't fucking give them ideas,
I don't know.
dude. You know they. All right, guys. The next villain we're talking about has kind of had a really nice resurgence in the 21st century in a lot of different mediums. We're talking about Vandal Savage. Very cool, very weird concept. He was a caveman 50,000 years ago that encountered a meteor, and this meteor was like this like glowing alien rock with nebulous properties, and him being of simple mind, you know, just being a caveman, saw this giant glowing rock that was warm and just like huddled up next to it for warmth in the night. And then when he woke up the next morning, he was like evolved and had like full cognizance, and like he basically went from like a Neanderthal or whatever to like a modern day Homo sapien.
Yeah, it's like that meme when you're like a 4-year-old at a birthday party and you suddenly gain consciousness. You know what I mean? And you're like, who am I?
Yeah, like why am I here? And what that basically does to him is it makes him kind of this unstoppable force while everyone around him is like hitting shit with clubs and stuff.
And I love that all the way back then, he was kind of like automatically the smartest one in the room. Well,
yes.
In the cave, more like.
Yeah.
That was terrible.
That was awesome. All right, thanks for watching.
But because of that, he's kind of like been pulling the strings behind history.
Absolutely.
Behind all these big events in the past, you know what I mean? And coming out on top.
I love the concept that I think they touch upon in his lore in the comics, but that they really elevate in the Young Justice cartoon where he's the main villain.
He's the best. He's the best in that show.
That's the best version of Vandal Savage.
Definitely.
Little hero, do you really think you have what it takes to survive, Vandal Savage?
And what they do is they establish that he's been so many different dictators and rulers and conquerors throughout history. Like, he was like Genghis Khan.
Yeah.
Like, that's so fucking cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
He was like the father of Nabu, who would become the Lord of Order that's like in Dr. Fate's helmet.
It's awesome to see from a storytelling point, but it also kind of gives him his like feeling of entitlement too. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. He's like, I'm the first one.
Exactly. And you kind of almost like can't refute it either.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, he's like, if Vandal's talking, I'm like, yeah, okay, bro, let him speak.
Yeah. In some ways, he's kind of like the first human.
It's funny that you mentioned that. We're not really big fans of Dark Knight's metal over here, but there's a great moment in the kind of prelude of that book where you see this ancient cabal of DC characters that have lived for centuries and aeons throughout the ages. Their most recent member is Ra's al Ghul, so he's like the baby of the group, and he's like, I know I'm the youngest among you, so like I have to defer to, you know, Vandal Savage. And it's just cool seeing someone of Ra's stature who's usually like I feel like Ra's in Batman stories feels like he's Vandal Savage.
Well, yeah, and he has that kind of like immortal complex thing going where you're not quite sure exactly how old he is and how far he goes back.
But Vandal Savage is like you're a little boy to me.
Yeah, and not just that, but I like the fact that throughout history and throughout everything that he's experienced, he's like kind of fine-tuned his evil formula because he's had that chance to have a kind of like, he's kind of had the opportunity to have his trials and errors throughout history, you know what I mean, and see what works and how he can twist people in a certain way.
Yeah, and then like finally he figures out like, oh, I should be a supervillain.
Yeah.
I also, going back to like him throughout history, I love the idea of so many characters throughout the history of the DC universe like maybe being part of his genetic line.
Well, just like Genghis Khan, like, you know what I mean?
Exactly. Well, and in the episode of Young Justice, when they go through his whole history, you see that at one point, I think it might be when he's Genghis Khan, his two sons in that scene, in that timeline, are like, I forget their names, but they're from Teen Titans. It's like the Thunder and Lightning. I was like, it's so fucking cool.
So you really don't know like the full extent of his influence throughout the DC universe. It's a great like oasis for storytellers to dip their toes into too, you know what I mean? Because you can kind of write anything you want with him.
You can, and like I'm not gonna be pissed about it because it's like what other DC characters were alive 50,000 years ago. You can do whatever you
Exactly. You're not gonna be like, well, actually in the year 2100 AD.
Yeah,
but you know,
that's why I'm like, when they say he's the father of like Dr. Fate, basically. I'm like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I'm into it.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He is so sick.
But guys, we're down to our number 1 pick. This is a villain that we've mentioned and talked about in different videos, and I think he's one of our absolute favorite villains in all of Marvel and DC Comics.
Easily.
We're talking about Brainiac.
Oh my god. And at this point, I think he's my favorite Superman villain.
Okay, what do you think? Do you think he's a better Superman villain or Justice League villain? Because he can work so perfectly as both.
That's the thing. It's like, I don't even know if he needs to be better. Like, I think the answer has to be Superman, just because I love the personal connection that they have. And like, just a little aside about Brainiac, I don't really care for the comic canon where he's like from the planet Kolu or whatever. Like, my headcanon is animated series and My Adventures with Superman, where he's from Krypton.
Yeah.
Like, that's Brainiac for me, where he was the AI on Krypton and like maybe had a hand in the explosion. Like, we don't know,
Yeah.
you know? But he also works so well as a Justice League villain, as we've seen in all the cartoons.
Yeah, I think what makes a great Justice League villain can be, you either have to be super strong or super smart. And I like Brainiac because he combines both of those perfectly.
He does. Like, he can go toe-to-toe in a fight with, you know, the likes of Darkseid, like we've seen in the cartoons, which, like, I keep mentioning the cartoons, like, that's the canon.
No, it is.
But again, he's so smart also, which I love. And for me, he's like the better Ultron.
Definitely.
You know what I mean?
And he kind of has that same thing that Ultron has, where each time you see him, he's upgraded a part of himself.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, he's constantly evolving, constantly taking in information and new tactics and kind of adding it to his arsenal.
They're so similar, actually.
Brainiac's better, though.
Way better. Way better.
Yeah. Well, that's what's kind of fun about Brainiac, too, is that he's cold and calculating, but he's also a bit, like, egotistical.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And pompous.
And he likes to push buttons, too, you know?
Exactly.
Especially, like, and I know you haven't watched it yet, but in My Adventures with Superman, bro, he pushes all of those buttons. And for me, that's my favorite version of Brainiac that I've ever seen.
They were going to declare a ceasefire, and then where would that leave me? I was built for war.
I like it too because you have a lot of like leniency on how you want to tell a story with them versus Justice League. You know, you can make him like a direct one-on-one threat with them, or you can have like an invasion story if you want, or like a mind control story if you want.
For sure. He's such a good mastermind villain. Like, he's such a good kind of Arkham City Ra's al Ghul like reveal type villain where like I could buy that he's behind everything, you know, especially if like the Justice League are fighting the Legion of Doom, like, but like maybe Brainiac's really pulling the strings behind. What I'm really saying is that I want Brainiac to be the villain in the Justice League movie.
100%. Yeah, and again, like we were saying at the beginning of this video, it really seems like since Final Crisis and New 52, DC has just been like pushing Darkseid to the forefront of like everything, you know what I mean?
Definitely.
And I think Brainiac...
Well, that's the thing is like Darkseid is not movie 1, bro. And he's not movie 2. And he could even be like movie 4. Brainiac comes before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We need to see Brainiac done justice.
I also like the different stories where he's such a big threat that sometimes the heroes and the villains have to band together to fight him.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, especially notably in like DC Universe Online and stuff like that. You know what I mean? The heroes and the villains sometimes have to come together to fight this like greater cause. And Brainiac is like the perfect funnel to have that kind of story.
Absolutely. Speaking of DC Universe Online, best 6 minutes I've ever seen.
The cinematic trailer.
Cinematic trailer.
Yeah, it's insane.
That's the best shit ever.
I feel like that's like a cornerstone of like every young comic nerd's upbringing.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Is that true?
Is seeing that and then being like, oh my god, I need this game, and then being like, a game's not like that cinematic trailer.
No, it's such a blue ball actually, because the game looks awesome and you log on and it's like World of Warcraft, like with like DC heroes, you know what I mean?
I agree. Going back to different things you can do with Brainiac, I love in different mediums where he melds with Lex Luthor to create kind of like a perfect like evil mind, like in the Justice League cartoon. I love that shit, bro.
Yeah.
You know when they merge and then like Flash like
uses the Speed Force.
Oh
to
my-
embrace them. That goes so hard, man.
that's peak.
That is peak. That's a peak Flash moment, which we don't get a lot of.
We don't get enough of them. Brainiac might be top 3 DC villains for me.
Well, you know, we should do a top 10 best DC
Yes.
villain video. Let us know in the comments if you want to see that.
Absolutely, guys. Let us know.
But those are just our picks for the most underrated Justice League villains. If you enjoyed the video, guys, give it a like, subscribe for more weekly content, and we'll see you guys later. Peace. 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 I like that we both went for the deep one on that one.
Very nice.